Hello, my name is Tia, also known as Costume Fiend because I'm both evil and excessively fond of dressing up. I keep forgetting to do this because I feel like asking for money of any kind for any reason is awkward as hell, but if you like these rambles and have some spare change, I do have a coffee page. I'll pronounce it right one day, like Kofi. I hear people say both, but it doesn't matter, whatever. That's only if you're interested, there's no pressure. Getting on topic though, in my last video I talked about some of my favorite black characters, and I made the distinction between characters that came on the scene black and characters that are either black coded or race bent. I decided to separate the two, so now I'm going to talk about the latter. Full disclosure though, I'm actually kind of mixed on race bending as a concept. I think sometimes it genuinely works and can add something to the story if it's done with care. However, I also know that it's often done poorly and by companies that are only interested in potential profit and don't mind using controversy to put butts in seats. That being said, it can also just be nice sometimes to feel included in franchises that would otherwise leave you out. Black women and femmes especially seem to get the short end of the stick regardless. In the case of two race-bent characters I'll use the example of Valkyrie / Brunhilde from Thor Ragnarok and Catwoman, who has actually been race-bent multiple times. The other part of this about characters that are black coded, which essentially means that the characters are not drawn black, but they either heavily resonate with black audiences or the writer purposely made them that way in a show or movie with animals or characters with no human skin tones. For that, my two picks are Sawyer from Cats Don't Dance and Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors. Back to Valkyrie though, she makes the list for a couple of reasons. The first being that of the three original Avengers way back in the MCU's infancy, Thor was probably my favorite. Between me just finding Chris Hemsworth attractive, liking the writing, for the most part, for the character, and being a casual enjoyer of Norse mythology, even though it wasn't considered the best franchise, I liked it anyway. I was also honestly just fine with having Idris Elba, also attractive, as Heimdall in the film as black representation, but the inclusion of Tessa Thompson to the cast had gotten me a little bit hyped back then. Considering how mid Thor the Dark World was, the decision to have Taika Waititi direct, whose work I had been enjoying at the time, and to bring a black woman into the lineup got me thinking that the third Thor movie might actually be kind of good. Plus, as a bonus, Tessa Thompson was also queer and had brought up in multiple interviews that the character Valkyrie was bisexual, even though people love to ignore that. I'm not sure if you know this, but black bisexual representation with women that's even remotely good is not super easy to find, and certainly not in mainstream franchises. So again, I was feeling kind of excited because now one of my favorite characters was going to share the screen with someone I could identify with, and you can argue with the sun on this one because I have receipts, but she also had a love interest potential as well. It's so rare that it feels like a superhero movie has been tailor-made for me, or honestly any movie, but Thor Ragnarok really felt like and still feels like it was made for me. Like, the best part of all of this is that I actually think it's a good movie, and I even saw it in theaters twice. The character Valkyrie, in my opinion, felt different from other women in the MCU. She wasn't the boys' babysitter, she wasn't put together, and she went on the kind of character arc we usually see with characters like Wolverine. Thor inspires her to fight for a cause bigger than herself again, this time for the people and not just the throne. Also, in my opinion, Tessa as Valkyrie had chemistry with everyone. I love seeing her interact with the Hulk / Bruce Banner, who were probably my tie for second faves from the original lineup after Thor. And her and Loki's banter was great. Their fight and the resulting moment from that made the wheels in my head turn a bit, and that's all I'll say to keep this PG/PG-13. Also, as I said, I don't care if you disagree, but she had chemistry with Thor too, and the director and actors had all said things that implied some shipping fuel. Whatever happened after this movie is quite frankly none of my business, and I do not see it. A conversation for another time though, so let me refocus. Pretty much a year after the movie's release, I got my first ever tattoo of the Valkyrie symbol on the character's arm, and I even cosplayed her shortly afterward. I forget, it was like a week later, but for me it wasn't just that I love the character, but also the tattoo itself doesn't have an obvious direct tie to Disney. No offense to anyone who does this, but I just don't personally like the idea of a tattoo of mine being like an ad or an endorsement. And it's also not anyone's face. It's both a nerd thing and in a way a black bi thing, like a kind of an inside joke to myself. Tattoos don't have to have deep or hidden meanings for everyone, but I prefer when they do, and I still love that this was my first one, even though my interest in the MCU has kind of waned. Moving on, though, I'll transition into talking about Catwoman via a fact I only recently realized. The first black actress to play Catwoman was Eartha Kitt, and funnily enough, Tessa Thompson actually portrayed Eartha Kitt in an episode of Drunk History, so there's your tie-in. Eartha Kitt was a legend, and her being the first black Catwoman honestly felt perfect. No one rules an R like Eartha Kitt, and her genuine flexibility and athleticism added something to her portrayal. So even though for racist reasons the character wasn't written to be Batman's love interest, as Catwoman usually is, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone who'd turn Miss Kitt down. Since Eartha Kitt, Catwoman has been portrayed by black women multiple times. She's been played by Zoe Kravitz twice, the first time actually being in the Lego Batman movie before the live action. She's voiced by Sanaa Lathan in the Harley Quinn animated series and in the DC Superhero Girls cartoon. She's voiced by Cree Summer. She's also been depicted as black in the tie-in comics to those things. Also, it doesn't fully count, I suppose, because she's technically not playing Selena Kyle, but to be fair, in the only solo Catwoman to exist, she is played by Halle Berry for better or worse. And I do respect that Halle Berry actually took the Razzie Award in person and takes it all in good spirit. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I love Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, both separately and together, which I talked about in another video. But as a child, I honestly enjoyed all three Gotham City Sirens and was even a fan of that short-lived web series they had. Catwoman is also depicted as bi sometimes, so that's kind of another win for me. It's hard to say which version is my favorite because, like with Harley Quinn's originator, Arlene Sorkin, it kind of feels like Eartha Kitt's version deserves to be in a category all by itself. But I will say this, when I think of the character now, I kind of always picture a black woman. And I will say that, I think I might give it to Sanaa Lathan for second because I do like how she comes across cool and unbothered in the Harley Quinn show. And apparently she had a fling with Poison Ivy. She kind of serves as a good balance to the way Harley and Ivy are depicted in the show, personality-wise. Anywho, moving on to our black-coded characters, let's talk about Sawyer from the animated film Cats Don't Dance. For the record, I borrowed this movie from Blockbuster several times years old. I love and have loved a lot of animated movies throughout my life, and this as a kid was definitely one of my favorites. I say that Sawyer is black-coded for two reasons. One, the movie is basically about segregation in Hollywood. All the animal actors struggle to get work in non-stereotypical roles, and many, including Sawyer herself, kind of resign themselves to being behind the scenes. And two, she is voiced by two black women. Jasmine Guy does her speaking voice, I believe, and Natalie King Cole did her singing voice. Sawyer is kind of the Lois Lane Megra type, which I almost always love, especially when put up against the sunshine in a bottle types. In Sawyer's case, her bottle of sunshine is her love interest Danny, who shows up on the scene with new energy and none of the other characters' jaded attitudes. As I said, Sawyer is a character type I often enjoy, in part because I suppose I can relate to the cynical, world-weary vibes while also admiring the more subdued, for lack of a better word, brand of femininity, kind of that almost femme fatale but not exactly kind of vibe. The other part is, though, probably there's maybe an optimist buried way deep down because I do also always love seeing those characters grow. Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now is still one of my favorite ending song and dance numbers. Sawyer's solo, When She's at a Crossroads, Tell Me Lies, that was also pretty great. All of these things put Sawyer on the list. Finally, last but certainly not least, a character that probably feels very different from the others on the list, but I wanted to include anyway, the one and only Audrey 2. The irony of the name isn't lost on me considering I just declared they're the one and only. But I consider Audrey 2 to be black-coded because I feel like in every major production of Little Shop of Horrors, they are kind of voiced by a black person, often a man. And honestly, the way the songs were written kind of makes it feel a bit intentional. In the movie musical, Audrey 2 is voiced by Levi Stubbs from the Four Tops. You can look them up. I believe the song Mean Green Mother from Outer Space was written for the movie. So arguably, in a way, it was written specifically for Levi Stubbs, I guess. I can't remember the casting came first or the song. But anyway, recently Audrey 2 was played by Amber Riley, who's one of the few, if only, black women to do it. And I'm still a little upset I didn't get to see her live. There's no way I could have gotten to Pasadena, California, though, or justified going even if I could. Audrey 2, the actual character now, is basically a carnivorous, murderous plant that, as the aforementioned song implies, came from outer space. The plant's name comes from the main character Seymour's crush and love interest Audrey, and is also referred to as Tui. This is pretty much why I refer to the character gender neutrally. I mean, they're a plant, and yeah. Tui is a fun villain with probably my favorite songs in the musical. Every once in a while, Feed Me just gets stuck in my head. I even did an Audrey 2 inspired makeup look last Halloween. Also, spoiler alert, but Audrey 2 wins. There's a cut of the movie that gives us like a happy for now ending, but this is one of the few times where I'm all for the tragic ending instead. Tui is a great villain, like I said, and the ending being sad, I guess, makes it feel more like a cautionary tale. And on the subject of the character's performance, Audrey 2's puppetry also always amazes me. The film especially ages really well because of it. So there you have it. A Norse superhero from the MCU, a cat burglar, an anthropomorphic cat actress, and a talking plant. Those are 4 more black characters that I stan. Join me next time for something else. Other than that, leave a like if you liked, subscribe for more nerdy rambling, and as always, have a good one.